Hello, welcome to another episode of Two Rivers Tuesday. I'm your host, Maggie Kalila, here with John Teague.
What's up, Maggie? Why are you laughing already?
I don't know, I just thought that was funny. I sound like a game show host.
Oh, okay.
Speaking of games, did you watch the Super Bowl?
Hey, good transition. We did watch the Super Bowl. I ate way too much Super Bowl food, but it was very yummy. And,
what was the best food?
The best? Oh, my gosh. Well, I did some wings on the smoker, and those were really good. Tim Tullis, his family came over, and he brought jalapeno poppers. I love jalapeno poppers.
What are jalapeno poppers?
Really?
Yeah,
like a jalapeno that's stuffed with like cream cheese or maybe like cream cheese and sausage or something, and then it's wrapped in bacon.
Oh.
Very good.
I couldn't eat it because it's spicy. I can't do it.
Oh.
So that's why I don't know what these are.
Well, if you scrape the seeds and sort of the spine out of the peppers, they're not really that spicy.
Good to know. I'll try it. What do you think of the halftime show?
Loved the halftime show. Usher, dude can dance.
Yes, this is wild.
Yeah, I mean, he can move. Yes. And I think even one of the girls were like, man, he's got some moves. We were a little disappointed that he didn't do DJ Got Us Falling in Love Again.
Oh yeah, that would have been good. But yeah, that was great.
Yeah, the roller skating whole thing, like that was epic.
Yes.
The roller skates, I love that.
That had to be so difficult.
Yeah. And then so it like cuts away to, was it Ludacris or somebody? Yeah. No, maybe it was Lil Jon.
Yes.
Who did Turn Down for What? And then and like Usher's somewhere off stage, like putting his tennis shoes back on or like, whatever,
yes.
Putting his Jordans back on or something. Like that was crazy.
Yes.
Like,
and Alicia Keys, that part was great.
Oh yeah.
I loved that part.
I knew it immediately when I heard the line, the piano melody line. I was like, that's Alicia Keys. Cause we all had like these like worksheets that all the kids were filling out and all the adults did it too. And they're like prop bet worksheets, and one of them was is anybody going to come out and do a special guest performance with Usher? And so, we were all excited when the first guest came. I think it was Alicia Keys.
Yes, I think so too.
Yeah.
Was one of them, how many times are they going to show Taylor Swift in the box?
No, but I thought about that should have been our tiebreaker in case we had a tie. And we weren't counting.
Yeah.
But the girls were loving it.
That's great. That's great. All right. Speaking of dancing, let's celebrate the small tall ball. Tell us about that.
Oh gosh, the small tall ball was this past weekend. If you're listening to this, the week we recorded, we had, I think, it was like 485 people came through registration that night and danced and had a blast and ate candy and popcorn and got their pictures taken. It was just super fun to watch moms and dads and grandparents and aunts and uncles and everybody just hanging out, having a good time and dancing. It was fun to watch our church family throw that party for everybody. They did a great job. We had a couple people sweat the night away in some mascot costumes.
Yes.
Your husband, Jake, was a part of that. Meredith Fellman, shout out to Meredith and Jake. They probably lost 10 pounds in those suits that night.
Yes.
And for whatever reason, whenever kids, especially the little ones, see mascots, they just think, I need to punch that huge animal.
Yes.
Like they just run up and like try to tackle him. Like I don't know what that is, but there's something.
Punch that huge animal.
Yeah, that's what they were doing.
Yeah.
I was watching it all night.
That's awesome.
But I think Jake and Meredith both got a few punches in themselves as well, but not on purpose. It was because they couldn't see
anything.
Couldn't really see anything.
Yes. When Jake got home, I was like, "What happened to you?" Like he's drenched, and his eyes were so bloodshot from how much sweat just like poured into his eyes all night long. It looked miserable.
At one point, Jake didn't know it. He's the miniature like Chick-fil-A cow, and at one point he didn't know it, but he was leading a conga line all behind him, but he didn't know it, and then he just stopped, and like all the kids stopped, and we're like, "You're leading a conga line. You got to keep going."
That's great. That's great. Yeah.
It was great. It was a fun night. Probably the hit song of the night. I was asking everybody who was there, like, what was the best song that got the crowd fired up, and it was Peaches from the Mario movie. Which you have a
Mario
fun
movie.
Yeah, Mario movie.
Okay.
You were like, "Oh, is that the song from Mario Kart?"
Yeah.
Like not the game.
Okay.
No, there was a Mario movie.
Oh,
but you were telling me a funny story about Mario Kart.
Yes. Yeah, Lauren and I used to play, which is my sister, we used to play Mario Kart on N64 all the time. And we would like be staying up way too late at night, and I'd sneak a little note under her door, be like, do you want to play N64? And we'd like quietly get it going. But I also had some anger issues, and I one time got so mad at her. And you know the controllers on N64 are like gigantic.
Yeah, they're huge.
Yes. And anyways, I just decided that needed to be chucked at her head, and it hit her. Like, I mean, it really drilled her right in the forehead, and I got in big trouble.
Wow.
But I wasn't really, I mean, I think I wanted it to hit her, but I was surprised that, I mean, it was just very accurate.
Why were you so angry? Did she like drop a banana peel in front of you or something?
I'm sure it was something dumb like that.
Yeah.
A banana peel. That's great. All right. Well, Sunday we started a new series.
We did.
One thing you talked about on Sunday that I really related to was trying to get all the groceries in one trip, and you showed a picture of that. I feel like there should be some type of competition to see who can like carry the most things in one trip, because I feel so confident in my skills that I would win that.
Yeah. Well, you can never. You should not make more than one trip with the groceries.
Never.
No matter how many you have, no matter how many gallons of things you have.
Yes.
You should always be able. And for whatever reason, don't you think that like it's interesting how like you can do that with groceries? More, but not necessarily like with weights or other things, you know. Like, I guess it's because it's hard to get your fingers around them, and those handles really help. Those handles mean you can like carry more.
Oh yeah, you can put them like all the way up your arm.
Oh, I don't do that. I gotta try to get them all in my hands.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
No, you gotta stack them up your arm.
Okay.
You can get more that way.
However you can do it, you know.
All right, so we were talking about that on Sunday because we started a new sermon series in Galatians that we're calling Traveling Light. So tell us a little bit about the series and what it's going to look like.
Yeah. Well, the book of Galatians is Paul's declaration of freedom. And when I think about freedom, I mean, there are a number of metaphors and images start to come to my mind, but one of them is just that I often carry around too many things with me. Got too many things in my hands, right? That's why we talked about the grocery sacks, and I had a bunch of luggage up on the platform on Sunday, and I just am always carrying around a bunch of things that I think I might need, and I want to have them if I need them. And there's that's kind of that weighs me down, and it's not. There's the better way, I think, and there's a more free way to live, where my hands are free and empty and open and ready to for whatever God may bring me. And so that was kind of the picture that I had in my mind about the freedom and how it related to our hands and all the things that we drag around with us that are actually like holding us back. The gospel is a message of freedom. Freedom from a lot of things, and then freedom to a lot of things. Yeah. And that's what we're going to talk about.
And the gospel can like make that claim because the gospel is enough to stand alone without all those other things. And so I really resonate with like always having too much. And with my wiring, it's because I want to be prepared for whatever could possibly come. So it's like, okay, I want to have the gospel, and I want to be prepared with like all these other things just in case I need them. You know, and I don't know what's going to happen, but I want to be prepared. But the gospel can make that claim because it is sufficient, and like we truly don't need anything else.
That's
and
right.
I think that's where, going back to our dangerous prayers, we need help believing that. It's like, I believe the gospel is enough, and help my unbelief when I try to also have some backup plans with me at all times.
That's right. Yeah.
You also talked a little bit about kind of one of the things that weigh us down, or we end up traveling with in more ways than we often realize, is just kind of all that we're consuming digitally. And so just as a quick reminder, we are inviting everyone into a digital fast for Lent. So Lent, if you're not familiar with it, is a season in the church calendar that Christians have practiced for hundreds of years, and it basically is trying to prepare your heart for Easter. So Easter is at the end of March, so Lent runs from February 14th to March 30th, I think is the official dates. And so it's just this season of preparing your heart to celebrate Easter by putting aside some of the things that often distract us and trying to fight our fleshly desires. And so often today, and this is so true in my own life, so many of those habits and desires are around the ways we consume from our devices and digitally and stuff. So we're calling and inviting everyone into a digital fast that we do together. You can choose from one of three things. Can you remind us what those three things are?
Yes, those three options are that you can fast from social media. Another one would be you could fast from just like TV or just watching shows, movies, that sort of thing. And then the third one would be to fast from screens in bed. So, and in particular, kind of having your phone right there and scrolling through as you're, getting in bed and getting ready to go to sleep at night, when there are other things you could be doing, like praying or connecting with your spouse or just decompressing from the day.
Yeah, those are good. Which one are you doing?
That's a good question. I have not decided yet, actually. I am trying to already get better at the no screens in bed thing. No scrolling in bed. And so that's probably the one I'll zoom in on. But I might also do the TV stuff. I might have a hard time like not watching shows or not shows, sports. In particular, it's Tennessee basketball season right now. So that might be a bit of a challenge, but maybe that's something
that's the point.
Well, no, it's not supposed to be hard, Maggie. I think I'm gonna, Anyway, hey, listen to this. I wanted to bring this quote in for some context. Like, why should we do this? Listen to what an author named Ronald Rolheiser says. He says that today there are a number of things in our lives that are blindly kind of flowing together and accidentally conspiring. I'm not sure I would say accidentally. I think there's a world out there that is very much intentionally conspiring to produce a climate within which it's really hard not only to think about God or to pray, but to simply have any interior depth whatsoever. He goes on to say, we are distracting ourselves into spiritual oblivion. And it's not that we have anything against God or depth or the Spirit. We like these. We want these, right? It's just that we are habitually too preoccupied to have these things show up on our screens, if you will.
Yeah.
And then one other thought to that would just be something that I heard a sort of a cultural commentator named Mark Sayers say, that there are many entities in our world today that have a vested interest in keeping us immature. Think about that.
Wow.
And I think a lot of it is coming at us on our phones
For sure.
and on our screens.
Yeah, that's good.
And I just think we need to be aware of that.
Yeah. So as we're all practicing this together during the season of Lent, we're putting these things aside, and our hope and prayer is that what would take the place of where we would often turn to our screens or TVs or whatever it is, that we would remember the gospel. And that's what this series is all about, is trying to help us grow in our awe of the gospel, because that's what the Galatians were forgetting. They were trying to turn to another gospel, and Paul's astonished, like, how are you so quickly turning to another gospel? Not that there is one, but we are so like them. We so quickly turn to other gospels and try to add things and things like that. So this series, our hope is that we would just grow in our awe of the gospel. But I want to talk a little bit about the gospel and what that word means. Euangelion, you can probably say it better than me.
Yes,
okay,
you got
great.
it.
And what does that word mean?
It means good news. Literally, that's what it means.
Yes. And so you were talking about how the term, I guess, is like a military term, and it means like they go and tell the people the good news that there has been a victory.
Yes.
And so you talked about how Martin Lloyd Jones kind of compares and contrasts what good news is versus advice. So talk a little bit about what the difference is in those two things.
Yeah. Well, Martin Lloyd Jones said it really well, and I don't have his quote in front of me, but basically, news is about something that has already happened. Advice is about something that has not happened, and you need to make it happen. Like, here's some good advice for you, Maggie. Now you need to go and do something with that. Whereas gospel, good news, is like, hey, check this out, Maggie. This is something that's already happened, and now you just get to live in light of that or in response to that.
Yeah.
So advice tends to put things on us, and news about something that's already happened, especially in terms of the gospel, is actually freeing us because something has really been put on someone else. In this particular case, our sin has been put on Jesus.
Yes. Yeah. That's good news. I think that's helpful because so often I feel like advice is our native language. Like we're really good at giving advice, and it's kind of our default, and it sounds good. We like it, right? Because it's easy to be like, oh, okay, I can fix this for you. Just do these things.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, I can check those boxes, and that feels good. But it's a lot harder to give gospel because that you may not see the results right away, or it might not feel like a quick fix or easy pill, right? And so I think that's what we need to press into is like seeing our tendency to want to get advice and want to give advice, but actually really believing and seeing that the gospel is sufficient and what's actually needed and will do a way better work than any advice can.
Yeah, and it's not that advice is bad, right? It just probably shouldn't be first.
Yes, yeah, that's helpful.
Not before we remember the gospel, right? And what has already been done and how that changes things and how that should change the way I think about something, right? And the reality is, even as I, just said that it's not that advice is bad, I will say this. We are overwhelmed with advice.
Yes.
We are overwhelmed. Just think about all the things that are rushing at us, that it's advice about how you can be better. You can do better. You can do more. Here's a life hack for you. Let me give you some advice about how to do this faster, more efficient, and still check the box. Like we are just overwhelmed with advice.
Yeah.
And that's part of the stuff that we drag around with us that I talked about on Sunday, like in all these bags that we sort of figuratively carry with us on the road everywhere we go. It's all this advice and like all these things we could be doing, and it's crushing.
Yes. Yeah, I think that often looks like, so in my world, the like propaganda that Instagram is feeding me, I'm getting all sorts of videos and reels and influencers telling me like, okay, these are the type of recipes you need to be making in your kitchen. This is this is what your sourdough needs to look like.
If you're a good mom.
Yes, exactly. This is the kind of parenting hacks. This is what like your parenting should look like. This is what your marriage should look like. These are the kind of conversations and communication styles you need to be having with your husband. This is what your house needs to look like. I mean, you could just go on and on and on. And that stuff, you can think that it's like, you look at it and it's like, okay, I'm not going to like, you think you're not really adding that to your bag, but I think it really does weigh on you and compound more than you realize.
Yeah. And I don't have the answer to this question, but some of those things can be very helpful.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
So it's like, how do you even, where do you draw the line? How do you create a healthy boundary so that you don't just overwhelm yourself with all these things that could actually be pretty good ideas and could be helpful? And, they are probably good recipes for you to make, and you're looking for new recipes.
Yes.
you know? But maybe just in that particular instance, it's like you're being, the algorithm is feeding you recipes and you're not looking for recipes right now. You could go look for recipes if you were looking for recipes, but it's feeding them to you. So you were just you in a moment, maybe even of habit, like we're sitting at a red light or like in a waiting room or in line at the grocery store or whatever, and you pick up your phone and you open it up, and now you're thinking about how you're a terrible cook or something. You know what I mean? Like, and that's the problem. And I don't know exactly how to fix that.
Yeah.
But we need to be aware of it.
Yes. I think awareness is key. Like, how much of that kind of stuff are you consuming, and like, how deep are you taking that in? Like, if if you're like feeling the weight of that and it's making you it's making you falter on like where your worth and value and identity is coming from, like those would be some red flags. But I do think that we need to grow an awareness of like the ways that those things are changing us and shaping us way more than we realize.
One of the things that I did when I was on sabbatical, and I realized that was a special thing, but I eliminated all like social media and even like news feeds, and there was a liberation there, that I just wasn't bogged down with just all the stuff that's happening maybe in the world, but also like in other people's lives, and then all the things that are coming at me like in my world and in my work, and maybe this is people that are listening, like you follow certain things that are in your industry, and so I'm being like, I was no longer being bombarded with all the awesome things that other people in my industry are doing that just make me feel like I'm not doing enough.
Yeah.
And man, there was a lot of freedom in that.
I bet.
I don't need to know. Here's the thing. Here's the last thing I'll say about it. I don't need to know what everybody else is doing. I need to know what the Lord is calling me to do.
Yes. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that there's a warning, just like in Galatians, these false teachers are coming in and giving a different gospel. You kind of helped us imagine what that probably looked like in their day on Sunday. We were like, they probably were successful and attractive and sounded good and were convincing. And I think that's kind of the warning we have to take away is like, who are we letting speak in and add weight to our lives just because it sounds good or they're attractive or they have a lot of followers or their kids are cute? Like, it's so, like, when you say it out loud, it's like, that's so silly, but we do allow these people to weigh in on our lives in ways that it's like, oh my gosh, I should be giving that weight and that significance to my community or my, more solid piece of wisdom to gain from. So I think we just need to heed that warning. And that's another reason for the digital fast that we're inviting everyone into.
Yep.
All right. So you also talked about some of the ways that we can respond to the gospel. So there's 4 of them: antagonism, apathy, addition, and all. So let's talk about antagonism. What might that look like if that's how someone is responding to the gospel?
Well, I think the obvious answer would just be someone that says, I reject that. In fact, I'm not just rejecting it, I'm offended by it. And I don't believe it. I don't want it. I don't need it. That's kind of what I said on Sunday. So I think that's an antagonistic response to the gospel. I wonder if there is an antagonism even within the Christian community. Like maybe we do, maybe we are. I wonder what it would look like. We didn't plan this, but what would it look like to be antagonistic toward the gospel and also be a Christian?
Yeah, well, I have an answer because I was like, as I was thinking through this, I was like, I think I see that in myself sometimes. So I think that some of these responses are not like how you always are, but you can have like a moment of responding in this way.
Yeah.
I think I see it when I'm like dealing with anger and the Holy Spirit is like, have you thought about the gospel? And I'm like, no, I don't want to think about the gospel.
I don't need that right now.
Yes. And so I think it can just be like really quick, but our flesh is just like, no, like that would make me have to like die to myself or that would cost me something. And so I angrily resist that. And so I think we have that, we can easily see that response in ourselves when our flesh is like, no, I don't want to forgive. I want to stay in this anger. I want to be offended. I want to justify myself. Like, I don't want the gospel.
I think that's brilliant, Maggie. I think that's really good for us. And even for me, like, and there are moments where I'm like, no, I don't want that right now. Like I want to just to stay in my whatever. Yep. Yeah. That's good.
So we need our hearts to soften to the gospel in so many ways. And the next one is apathy. Talk a little bit about what that often looks like.
Apathy is like you hear the message about Jesus dying on the cross for your sin so that you could spend eternity with him. And you're kind of like, meh. Cool. And this is, we grow apathetic, I think. Perhaps familiarity breeds contempt. And so maybe we've grown up in the church, we've kind of heard that message a lot, and it sort of begins to lose its effect on us. And the weight of that, we sort of, it just, I don't know, we're just sort of meh to it. And so the way I described it on Sunday is like, that's important. That's probably good. And I definitely don't want to burn in hell. So, put Jesus in one of those bags over there, put him in the church bag, and I'll get him out when I need him, or, maybe it's put him in the, in case of emergency, break glass bag, like if you lose your job or something hard happens, you like, go get him out. Yeah. But there's more to life with Jesus than that.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that one especially gets at the God, the gospel is good news for every moment and every day. It's good news for Tuesday morning, but the lie of apathy is that the gospel was just good news for like the day you got saved, right? It's like, okay, that got you in, and now we don't have to care about that anymore.
Now it's up to you. Yeah.
Yes. And so, but the truth is that like the gospel is good news for every moment, and we want to grow in our awe of it. And I think that, yeah, my prayer against this is just like begging God to keep my heart really soft, because like I do hear the gospel a lot. It's my job, right? And like, so a lot of us are maybe in circles and in church life, or you have kids and you're telling them all the time. It can be really familiar. So it's just like, Lord, I need you desperately to keep my heart really soft to this, because I don't want it to ever grow old to me.
That's right. And I think that's why we practice and engage the heart in our life groups, reminding one another of the gospel when we are open and honest about our sinfulness. And sometimes we'll even go through that digging deeper chart, and it's trying to expose maybe the lie that we believe, and then trying to say, what does the gospel tell you? What is the whole story of what God has done for you? Like, what does that, how can that speak into this moment? And then, probably leads you to think something new, believe something new, feel something different, do something different.
Yes.
Because of what the gospel says.
Yes. Yeah. And that practice of like making myself tell you the good news helps my heart believe it more and more. I so often find myself like, okay, what is the good news for them? And as I'm like sorting through, like, okay, it's this, and I'm telling them the good news, my heart's like, oh yeah, we love this.
Yeah.
And so I think this, like, that discipline of giving others the gospel, reminding your spouse of the gospel, reminding your children of the gospel, like rehearsing it, that is what keeps our heart alive to it.
Yeah.
All right. The next one is addition. Tell us what this looks like.
Addition looks like, and this is definitely what was going on in Galatia. It's kind of like, hey, Jesus died on the cross for your sin, and now you need to do all these other things. You need to add a lot of religious stuff to this in order to have salvation.
Yes. Yeah. And we've talked about this a lot. It's not always that we're trying to earn our salvation necessarily, but we might be trying to prove that we were worthy of it, or like pat ourselves on the back or something like that. It's twisted in our hearts.
It is twisted in our hearts. Like, maybe I think we're all like savvy enough at this point, especially if you've kind of grown up around the church, to kind of be like, okay, there's no way I can like good works my way into heaven if this is in fact true, right? Like if God is this holy and righteous God, and he cannot be in the presence of sin, and we have, we are sinful. And if we're going to believe all of that, then we're probably thinking like, okay, well, there's really no way, that we're going to be able to like earn our way into heaven.
Right.
So I guess I'm thinking about Christians right now, perhaps. And then, but the reality is we sometimes think that if we don't do enough, he'll be disappointed with us.
Yes.
And then we lose out on the relationship with him, because we don't like being around. We don't typically draw near to people who we think don't really want to be near us.
Right. Right.
And so I think that's one of the challenges for us in the church is thinking that we haven't done enough to like please him.
Yes. Yeah. And I think the helpful distinction is like, okay, I'm free from having to do these things to please God, yet at the same time, I'm free to do these things out of, like, I have been given the righteousness of Christ. He does delight in me. I'm fully approved of, fully accepted, and I'm free to do those things from a different posture now, not trying to earn, but knowing that out of the delight that he has in me, I can also delight in him. And it's just from a different posture then.
Yeah.
All right, and the last one, and which is the one we are praying that the Lord does in our hearts and wanting to grow in, is awe. What does that look like?
What does awe of the gospel look like? Wow. So first thing that comes to my mind is the song that Jesse sang over us during communion on Sunday, and it's just this abandonment in worship, and not just like in church on Sunday morning, but just a lifestyle of just praising God and giving him glory and credit, and just a joy that comes from just like reveling in the fact that your situation has been dramatically changed, and it's all because of what he did, and not at all because of anything you did. And that just creates this like, I just want to worship him.
Yes.
Like there's just a light in my eyes. There's just a joy there That's one way, I
Yes.
think.
Yeah. Yeah. I just picture just like living in and resting in the victory that has already been accomplished. Back to the like, what is the good news? It's like a declaration and a new reality. And we just get to live in that, not try to like grasp for it. So, how do we get there? How do we grow in our awe of the gospel?
Yeah, great question. I was going to ask you that, Maggie. I do think that practicing confession is a way that we grow in the awe of the gospel.
Yeah.
Because I think when we think about where our hearts are broken and bent, we're like, wow, and I'm still loved, and like I think that creates some awe.
Yes.
What would you say?
I just think giving it time to sink in. Like, I think for me, the familiarity and just like the frequency of which I hear the gospel or gospel truths, it can just so easily be like, yep, got it. And like mentally, I'm like, yeah, that's true. But I have to make space to like really ponder and meditate on those truths and give them time to sink into my heart. And once they like hit my heart's like, yes, and like it's softened and it loves it and it's in awe. Yeah. But if I just only let it hit the mental level and don't give it time to sink to my heart never really feels the weight and awe of it.
Another thing that I've been trying to be more aware of when I pray is to just spend more time praising God on the front end, praising Him for certain things that He's done, but also just kind of who He is in my life and where I see Him at work, and that creates more appreciation, gratitude, and I think awe.
Yes. Yeah. That reminds me of just that psalm. I think, remember the joy of your salvation. It's just like taking time to praise Him for your salvation, praise Him for the gospel, and see the beauty of it.
Yeah.
So listeners, I encourage you, this is about to end and you may have a few moments of silence after this podcast is over. I encourage you to fill that silence with just pondering the gospel, letting it have time to sink into your heart, and hopefully growing in your awe of it.
Yes, that's a great way to end it.
All right. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week.
See ya.